Welcome to the debate. Today we're plunging into, well, one of the most chilling cosmic hypotheticals you can imagine. What if the sun, our life-giving star, were to suddenly just abruptly stop producing light? We're not talking about the slow, natural death of a star over billions of years, but an instant, catastrophic event and its immediate, cascading consequences for Earth. Our central question for discussion today is pretty stark. To what extent could complex life, particularly us, human civilization, genuinely adapt and preserve its core existence in the face of such an unprecedented cosmic challenge? My perspective, frankly, is that such an event would inevitably lead to an unavoidable and ultimately devastating collapse of recognizable civilization, leaving behind, at best, just a mere echo of humanity.
Indeed. And I think my esteemed colleague here is setting up the challenge well. The idea of our sun just switching off it's a truly unparalleled scenario, right? It forces us to confront the very limits of life as we know it. Now, I come at it from a slightly different angle. I maintain that while the challenges would be immense, almost unfathomable, the inherent resilience of life, and let's be honest, the boundless ingenuity of human civilization would allow for a profound, albeit radical, transformation. We often underestimate our capacity for adaptation when faced with extreme conditions. And I believe humanity's intellectual and creative prowess would not just enable survival, but also the forging of new, complex societies in a world completely devoid of sunlight.
I appreciate that optimistic outlook, I really do, but I think it fundamentally underestimates the sheer scale of the immediate catastrophe. Let's really think about the initial impact. Okay, we get about 8 minutes of grace, the travel time for light, and then perpetual darkness descends. Following that, a gradual but utterly relentless drop in temperature would begin. The most catastrophic loss, though, isn't just the cold or the dark, it's the complete cessation of photosynthesis. No more crops, no wheat for bread, obviously, but far more critically, the death of ocean algae. These tiny organisms are Earth's primary source of oxygen. Their demise would lead to plummeting atmospheric oxygen levels, making much of the planet inhabitable for aerobic life, which, remember, is most complex life, including us. And this isn't just about breathing. A drastic, sustained drop in oxygen, combined with that extreme cold, it wouldn't just make our surface structures uninhabitable. It could fundamentally alter the chemical stability of materials. Think about rebar inside concrete corroding faster, the concrete itself crumbling. The very bones of our civilization could physically disintegrate. The entire food chain would utterly collapse. And while yes, deep underground bunkers could offer temporary refuge, the sheer scale of the challenges, maintaining heat, growing food with UV lamps, generating oxygen, presumably from transplanted trees, for billions of people, that would stretch human ingenuity far, far past its breaking point. The very fabric of our social and cultural life, which is entirely reliant on surface conditions and resources, would be irrevocably lost. It leaves a subterranean struggle for mere desperate survival. Our essential vitamin D source? Gone. The surface becomes a desolate, frozen wasteland, eventually dominated by, bizarre, cold-tolerant life forms, with humans relegated to some hidden, desperate existence, far from anything we'd recognize as a thriving civilization.
I understand the gravity of those immediate impacts. They are indeed profound, absolutely. However, I believe your argument, while compelling, maybe doesn't fully account for the incredible resilience and the capacity for innovation that life, and humanity specifically, has repeatedly demonstrated throughout history. Yes, the surface environment would rapidly become hostile, disorienting for animals, sure. But the Earth's core would continue to generate immense heat, right? And our vast oceans, they'd retain warmth for a significant time, slowing the immediate freezing of the planet. These aren't minor details. They provide crucial buffers. The critical factor for long-term survival, as I see it, really lies in humanity's capacity for innovation and adaptation. The material we're looking at indicates that the construction of sophisticated underground shelters and bunkers would become a priority. And these aren't just, holes in the ground. They'd be controlled environments, specifically designed for things like UV light farming and oxygen generation using transplanted trees. This ability to essentially bring essential ecosystems with us underground, that's key. Furthermore, some existing life forms, think about deep-sea creatures, they're already perfectly accustomed to perpetual darkness and extreme conditions. They wouldn't just survive, they could potentially thrive, evolve, maybe even adapt to the frozen surface, perhaps growing to immense sizes as they fill new ecological niches. And humanity, too? Well, we'd undergo a remarkable, albeit radical transformation over, say, hundreds of thousands of years. Our bodies would adapt. Yes, larger eyes, paler skin, enhanced hearing for subterranean life. But crucially, our intellect, our defining feature, that would remain. This allows us to build extensive subterranean cities, complex networks, channel systems.
We would, according to the source, preserve our cultural heritage, our art, vital records, within these hidden enclaves, retaining our identity and dominance in this new underground world. It demonstrates that even in perpetual darkness, life finds a way to persist, and importantly, to evolve.
I appreciate your faith in human ingenuity, I really do, but I find it hard to square that with the sheer, immediate, and cascading scale of ecological collapse. You speak of innovation, but let's circle back to that oxygen crisis. The loss of ocean algae isn't just a problem for fish, it's an existential threat to all aerobic life, far beyond just food shortages. We're talking about the very air we breathe diminishing significantly. And as I mentioned, this isn't just about personal respiration, it has a direct physical impact on our infrastructure. Think about that for a moment. The very bones of our civilization, buildings, bridges, dams, they're designed for specific atmospheric and thermal conditions. A drastic, sustained drop in oxygen, plus extreme cold, it wouldn't just make them uninhabitable, it could fundamentally alter the chemical stability of the materials. We're talking accelerated corrosion of rebar, concrete crumbling much faster.
What does that leave us to rebuild from? And you talk about sustaining subterranean ecosystems with UV lamps and transplanted trees for billions of people? The sheer volume of resources needed for that, the energy demands, the logistical hurdle of maintaining constant heat, light, and a breathable atmosphere for a global population, even a dramatically reduced one, it just seems almost insurmountable. It's not just about finding a solution, it's about the global implementation and maintenance of incredibly complex life support systems under the most dire, resource-scarce conditions imaginable. It's one thing to keep a few hundred alive in a prototype biodome, it's a whole different ballgame scaling it for millions or billions.
Okay, I understand the logistical concerns you raise, but I think you're maybe framing them as an impossible barrier, when in reality, they represent a monumental challenge that human ingenuity is uniquely equipped to meet. Our analysis, the source material itself, explicitly details that we can use UV lamps for growing crops and that we can cultivate oxygen-producing trees within sealed, controlled environments. This isn't just, wishful thinking. It's described as a planned adaptation. Yes, the scale is immense, but so is our capacity to innovate under pressure. Think about the Earth's internal core. It continues to produce significant, exploitable heat. This isn't just a temporary buffer. It's a constant, stable resource for underground habitats, providing a foundational warmth that would be essential for long-term survival. And beyond that, our ability to extract deep-sea resources like gas and oil, even under frozen oceans, speaks to an enduring resourcefulness. We've mastered drilling in some of the most hostile environments on our current planet, right? To suggest we simply couldn't adapt those skills to a new deep-sea frontier, to fuel our underground cities or to build new geothermal energy sources, I think that underestimates the very drive that built our civilization in the first place. This isn't about maintaining our current, perhaps lavish lifestyle for billions. It's about intelligent, focused survival and the preservation of our core elements in a transformed state.
But this transformation you describe, this new form of existence, wouldn't it fundamentally alter what it means to be human? What constitutes a civilization? You talk about adapting, but what kind of existence is it really? Living perpetually underground with altered senses, the material mentions much larger eyes, more sensitive hearing, paler skin, and facing constant threats from newly dominant creatures. I mean, the source even mentions giant tardigrades the size of polar bears. That's
Well, that's not just an inconvenience, it's a profound shift in our place in the biological order. This new world would surely strip away much of our current cultural, social, psychological frameworks. The focus would shift entirely to mere survival, wouldn't it? Leaving little to no room for the complex societal structures, the diverse expressions, the individual freedoms that I think define humanity today. The idea of preserving part becomes, well, it feels secondary when basic existence is the primary goal, a luxury few could afford to even think about. Such a civilization would be a shadow of its former self, wouldn't it? A desperate struggle rather than a thriving, evolving society. Our current identity is so intrinsically linked to our surface environment, to sunlight, to open skies. Losing that feels like losing a fundamental piece of ourselves, a profound and irreparable loss.
That's a compelling point, but I have to disagree that adaptability inherently equates to a loss of core identity. While the physical changes would be profound, yes, I think you're perhaps underselling humanity's ability to adapt while retaining what truly defines us. The source material is quite explicit here. It states that humans would remain the smartest species on the planet. And importantly, it says we would have managed to keep old art pieces from the surface and important records to stay human as much as possible. Now, that doesn't sound like mere survival to me. That suggests a deliberate, organized effort to retain cultural memory, intellectual heritage, even in a drastically new environment. We'd evolve physically, sure, but our cognitive capacity, our drive to create, to remember, that's what truly defines us, and the source suggests that remains. The development of large underground channels and networks, and cities and colonies, that indicates a continuation of complex social organization, not just isolated groups struggling in the dark. The physical adaptations described are simply evolutionary responses necessary for a new environment, not a fundamental loss of what makes us human. We've always adapted, right? From savannas to ice ages, our humanity evolved with us. It wasn't lost. And as for the giant tardigrades, yes, they're a fascinating, maybe slightly daunting detail. But humanity has always coexisted with and often dominated formidable life forms. Our intellect and capacity for engineering would surely allow us to carve out our niche, even if it meant sharing our new world with vastly different creatures.
Okay, but I must stress a crucial distinction here, though. Our entire discussion, and indeed the initial premise, has focused on the sun simply ceasing to produce light. That's a terrifying enough scenario, absolutely. However, if the sun were to completely disappear, I mean, not just cease shining, but vanish from our solar system altogether, the challenges become overwhelmingly external, not purely internal. The gravitational destabilization that would result, it would send Earth spiraling chaotically through space. We'd be called a rogue planet, inevitably leading to collisions with other planets, moons, comets. In that far more dire scenario, all our concerns about cold, oxygen, resource management, underground bunkers, they'd be entirely superseded by the existential threat of planetary destruction itself. This truly underscores the profound fragility of our position in the cosmos, where even humanity's most advanced adaptations, our subterranean efforts, would be utterly irrelevant against the brute, overwhelming forces of celestial mechanics. It's a critical difference in the very nature of the cosmic threat. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I absolutely agree that the scenario of the sun disappearing completely presents a different and, yes, likely far more catastrophic set of challenges. That's an entirely distinct worst-case scenario where our planet itself is probably torn apart or just flung into the void. However, the central premise of our debate today, as you initially framed it and as explored in the material, revolves around the sun simply decided to turn off. The loss of light and heat, but not gravitational stability. And that distinction is vital because it allows for a continued, albeit profoundly transformed existence on Earth. So while acknowledging the sun disappears scenario is more dire, maybe fundamentally unsurvivable, it's really a separate discussion. It shouldn't overshadow the remarkable potential for adaptation in the light-off scenario we've been examining. Our ability to build deep bunkers, endure extreme cold, harness geothermal energy, that would still be paramount in the scenario we're focused on, potentially allowing life to continue, unlike the chaotic destruction implied by the sun vanishing entirely. So for today,
I think it's important we stick to the specific challenge initially presented, to properly explore the depths of adaptation to a world without sunlight.
Fair enough. Our conversation today has really shone a light, ironically, on the incredible, complex consequences of an event as cataclysmic as the sun's sudden cessation of light. I maintain that this would initiate an overwhelming ecological collapse, presenting profound scientific and social challenges that would, in my view, lead to a fundamentally degraded and unrecognizable form of human existence, if not outright extinction. The loss of critical resources like oxygen-producing algae, the physical disintegration of our surface world, it paints a picture of an almost insurmountable hurdle for true civilization as we currently understand it, forcing humanity into a desperate, diminished struggle for mere survival.
And while I certainly acknowledge the immense scale of the degradation to our surface world and the radical changes humanity would inevitably face, I remain convinced that life, particularly human civilization, possesses an enduring resilience and innovative spirit. We've explored the potential for long-term human adaptation underground with sophisticated infrastructure, the potential preservation of our cultural heritage, and our intellect not just surviving, but continuing to drive our species forward. The details within the material, from the design of these subterranean cities to the potential for deep-sea life to thrive alongside us, paint a vivid picture of a world both lost, yes, but also reimagined.
We've definitely delved into critical aspects, haven't we? From the fate of our atmosphere, the rise of new dominant species like those giant tardigrades, and the necessity of radical human physical and social transformation. It really makes you question what truly defines civilization at its core.
Exactly. And we've seen how humanity's innate drive to preserve its identity and adapt its environment could forge a new existence, creating something potentially new and compelling, even in the face of perpetual darkness. Ultimately, I suppose the question of humanity's true fate and the preservation of its core identity in such an extreme scenario remains a powerful subject for continued contemplation. It certainly underscores the value of considering multiple perspectives on even the most extreme cosmic possibilities that this kind of thought experiment allows us to ponder.